I never expected my life to unravel because of a rainy Tuesday afternoon. But that's how these things go, right? The biggest changes come wrapped in the most ordinary moments. My name is Lark, and I've owned Transformations Hair Studio for over 20 years. It's more than just a salon. It's where people come to reinvent themselves, share their secrets, and sometimes cry into my apron when life gets too heavy. I've always prided myself on being able to read people, to sense what they need beyond just a new haircut. That Tuesday, I was finishing up with Mrs. Peterson, my regular 3 o'clock appointment, when the bell above the door chimed. A young woman stumbled in, completely drenched from the downpour outside. Water dripped from her expensive-looking coat onto my freshly swept floors, but it was her eyes that caught my attention, wide, desperate, and holding something that made my stomach twist. "I'm so sorry to come in without an appointment," she said, pushing wet strands of dark hair from her face. I really need a change. Today, please?" There was something familiar about her, though I couldn't place it. "I have a cancellation in 30 minutes, I heard myself say, even though I didn't." Something in her expression made me want to help. She introduced herself as Clara and sank into my chair like it was a lifeboat. As I draped the cape around her shoulders, I noticed her hands trembling slightly. "Just cut it all off," she whispered, meeting my eyes in the mirror. "I need to look different." "He can't. I just need a fresh start." I've heard variations of this story hundreds of times, women running from something or someone. But Clara's voice carried an edge that made the hair on my arm stand up. As I worked, she slowly began to talk about a recent breakup. Nothing unusual there, except for how she described her ex, successful, married, trapped in a loveless relationship. The usual justifications. But then she mentioned his job in tech, and my scissors hesitated mid-snip. "He promised to leave her," Clara said softly, more to herself than to me. "He just needs time to figure things out." My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably another message from my husband Gideon, explaining why he'd be late again tonight. Something about a tech conference downtown. I kept cutting, kept smiling, even as ice began forming in my chest. Because suddenly, I knew exactly why Clara looked familiar. I'd seen her photo before, tucked in my husband's wallet when he thought I wasn't looking. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Clara's words in my head while watching Gideon's chest rise and fall beside me. He'd come home late again, smelling of expensive cologne that wasn't his usual brand. When I asked about the tech conference, he'd mumbled something about networking and passed out almost immediately. The next morning, I noticed something different about him as he got ready for work. He'd lost weight, a lot of it actually. His suits hung looser, and there was a new definition to his jaw that hadn't been there 6 months ago. How had I missed these changes? "I'm thinking of joining that new gym downtown," he announced over coffee. "The one near the office. Doctor says I need to watch my heart." I nodded, studying his face. "That's where Zara works, right? As a trainer." "Does she?" He didn't meet my eyes, suddenly very interested in his phone. "Hadn't noticed." Later that day, Orion stopped by the salon during my lunch break. My son looked troubled, his usually neat appearance slightly disheveled. He picked at his sandwich while I pretended to organize my styling tools. "Mom," he finally said, "have you noticed anything weird about Zara lately?" I paused, scissors in hand. "Weird how?" "She's been having these long phone calls. Always steps outside to take them." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father's it made my chest ache. "Last night, I heard her mention Dad's name. When I asked about it, she got defensive. Said I was paranoid." My stomach churned. "Maybe it's about the family dinner next week?" Even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. "Maybe." Orion didn't sound convinced. "It's just, she's been pushing to buy a house. A big one. Way out of our budget. But she keeps saying not to worry about the money." Just then, the bell chimed. Through the window, I saw Gideon's car pull into the parking lot. But instead of coming inside, he stayed there, talking on his phone. A moment later, Zara walked past the salon, gym bag over her shoulder. She glanced inside, saw us watching, and quickly looked away. Then she got into Gideon's car. That's weird, Orion said, frowning. She told me she had clients all afternoon. I squeezed his shoulder, trying to keep my hand from shaking. Honey, I think we need to talk. But before I could continue, my phone buzzed. A text from Clara. Can we meet? There's something you need to know about your husband. And your daughter-in-law. I met Clara at a quiet coffee shop across town, far from my usual spots. She was already there, fidgeting with a napkin, her newly short hair making her look younger and more vulnerable than before. Orion sat beside me, his jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. I'm sorry, Clara started, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know how deep this went at first. I thought I was special to Gideon, but then I found out about the others. Orion's hand gripped mine under the table. Others? Clara pulled out her phone, sliding it across the table. Zara's been organizing things. She finds women, introduces them to your father at the gym. Then Clara swallowed hard. She takes pictures. Evidence. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the messages. Zara's name appeared repeatedly alongside numbers, large numbers. Bank transfers, dates, locations. She's blackmailing him, I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Not just him. Clara's eyes met mine. There are other executives. Zara has a whole network. She uses the gym to meet wealthy married men, gains their trust, then introduces them to women like me. Once things get complicated, she steps in with proof. Demands money to keep quiet. Orion stood up so suddenly his chair crashed backward. You're lying. Honey, I started, but he was already pulling out his own phone. Look, he said, pulling up his banking app. Our joint account. The one Zara's been pushing me to close. His voice cracked. There's been regular deposits. Every month. Thousands of dollars. That's how she convinced me to play along, Clara admitted. Said it was easy money. Just be charming, be available. Let nature take its course. She wiped her eyes. But then I met you, Lark. Saw what a real family looks like. What I was helping destroy. My mind raced back through the past year, Zara's sudden interest in working at the gym, her expensive new clothes, the house hunting above their means. All while my son worked extra freelance jobs to save for their future. Why tell us now? I asked Clara. Because Zara's getting greedy. She's threatening to expose everything unless Gideon pays more. And she hesitated. She's pregnant. The coffee shop seemed to tilt sideways. Orion made a sound like he'd been punched. Is it? I couldn't finish the question. She says it's Gideon's. Clara wouldn't meet our eyes. But she's told that to 2 other men too. All of them are paying to keep it quiet. My phone buzzed, a text from Gideon. Where are you? We need to talk. Zara just showed up at my office. I looked at my son, seeing the same cold fury in his eyes that I felt in my heart. No, I said, standing up. We're done talking. It's time for action. The drive to Gideon's office felt like walking into a trap, but I wasn't the prey anymore. Orion insisted on coming with me, his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Clara's evidence was safely backed up on both our phones, insurance against whatever game Zara thought she was playing. We found them in Gideon's corner office, my husband of 30 years looking small behind his massive desk, Zara perched on the edge like she owned it. She didn't seem surprised to see us. Perfect timing, she said, smoothing her designer dress over her still flat stomach. We were just discussing family matters. Like how you've been blackmailing my father. Orion's voice could have frozen hell. Zara's smile didn't waver. Blackmail is such an ugly word. I prefer mutual arrangement. Right, Gideon. My husband wouldn't meet my eyes. Lark, I can explain dash. Can you explain this? I pulled up the photos Clara had shared. Or these bank statements. Or maybe you'd like to explain why our daughter-in-law is claiming to carry your child. Among others, Orion added, his voice breaking slightly. Zara's composure cracked for just a moment. Clara talked. Interesting. She stood, moving to the window. Did she mention her role? How eagerly she played her part. She did, I said. She also mentioned the other executives. Their wives might be interested in your business model. You wouldn't. But Zara's confidence was slipping. You destroy your own family's reputation. Your salon dash. My salon will survive. Your house of cards won't. Gideon finally found his voice. The pregnancy. It can't be mine. We were careful, Dash. Were you? Zara turned, something dangerous in her eyes. Like you were careful with the company funds you've been embezzling to pay me? The board might have questions about that. The room went silent. Orion looked at his father in horror. Dad? I had to, Gideon whispered. She knew about everything, the affairs, the money laundering through the tech conferences, all of it. I thought I could handle it. Handle it? Zara laughed. You handed me everything I needed on a silver platter. All those lonely nights while Lark worked late at the salon. It was almost too easy. I felt oddly calm as the last pieces fell into place. You planned this from the start. Getting the job at the gym, marrying my son. I needed access, she shrugged. Orion was. Convenient. My son moved so fast I barely saw it. But instead of confronting Zara, he went to his father's computer and started typing. What are you doing? Zara's voice held the first note of real fear I'd heard. Sending everything to the board, Orion said quietly. All of it. Let them sort out who's guilty of what. You'll go down with us, Gideon warned. Orion looked at me, and I saw my own determination reflected in his eyes. Some things are worth burning for. The board meeting was called for 9 the next morning. I sat in my car outside the corporate office, watching executives hurry in with grim faces. Orion had sent everything, every document, every photo, every transaction. The match was lit. Now we'd watch it burn. My phone buzzed with a message from Clara. Zara's gone. Emptied her accounts this morning. I'm sorry. Before I could respond, a tap on my window made me jump. Gideon stood there, looking older than I'd ever seen him. They're asking for you too, he said quietly. As a character witness. The elevator ride up was silent. 30 years of marriage reduced to avoiding each other's reflection in the polished doors. In the boardroom, faces turned to study me, these men who'd probably seen my husband's indiscretions as just another business expense. Mrs. Simmons, the board chairman began, we understand you have direct knowledge of certain activities involving company funds. I opened my mouth to speak, but another voice cut through the room. She knows nothing. Zara stood in the doorway, designer bag still on her shoulder. She looked like she hadn't slept. I have a counteroffer, she announced, dropping a USB drive on the table. Everything about everyone. Not just Gideon. Every executive who used my services, every penny laundered through fake conferences, every affair arranged through the gym. Names, dates, receipts. She smiled thinly. I was very thorough. The room erupted in whispers. I watched these powerful men squirm, saw their faces pale. You'd implicate yourself, someone argued. I'm already implicated, Zara shot back. But I can either go down alone or take this whole company with me. Your choice. Orion stepped forward. Mom, don't let them dash. Actually, I interrupted. Standing up, I have something to say. I pulled out my phone. Press play on the recording from yesterday's confrontation in Gideon's office. Zara's confession filled the room. But that's not all, I continued, meeting each board member's eyes. While you were busy covering up scandals, I was building something honest. My salon has served this community for 20 years. And every woman who's ever sat in my chair? They're all watching this live stream right now. I held up my phone, showing the active broadcast to my salon's social media page. Thousands of viewers were already commenting. You can bury this, I said calmly, but you'll bury yourselves too. Or we can clean house. Starting with my husband and my former daughter-in-law. Zara's composure finally cracked. You wouldn't dare dash. I already have. I turned to Gideon. I gave you 30 years. I won't give you one more minute of silence. The chairman cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss severance packages. The media circus hit like a tornado. By evening, every local news station was running the story of the tech company scandal. My salon's phone wouldn't stop ringing, not for appointments, but for interviews. Everyone wanted to hear from the hairdresser who exposed it all. I sat in my empty salon after hours, watching my reflection in the mirrors. 30 years of memories haunted every corner. Gideon bringing me coffee during late nights. Orion doing homework at the reception desk. All of it felt tainted now. The bell chimed. Clara stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. "I thought I'd find you here," she said. "The police want to talk to me about Zara's operation. They think there might be more victims." I nodded, too tired to speak. My phone buzzed again, another message from Gideon's lawyer about the divorce proceedings. "I never meant for any of this," Clara continued, sitting in the styling chair where we'd first met. "I was just lost, desperate. Zara knew exactly how to spot people like me. People like you? Broken ones." She met my eyes in the mirror. "But you weren't broken. That's what scared her about you." Why she pushed Gideon so hard too. My scissors clattered to the floor. "To what?" "To destroy your salon. The company was going to buy this building, force you out. Make it look like business as usual." Clara's voice cracked. "Zara said if you had nothing left, you'd be easier to control." The room spun. All those nights Gideon spent reviewing property documents, claiming he was helping me expand the business. He'd been planning my downfall instead. My phone rang. Orion. "Mom? You need to come home. Dad's here. He's not doing well." I found them in my kitchen. Gideon sat at the table, head in his hands. Papers spread before him, bank statements, property deeds, evidence of years of manipulation. "I transferred everything back," he whispered. "The salon, the house, your savings. It's all in your name now." "Why?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Because Zara was right. I wanted to break you. Make you need me again." He looked up, eyes red. "But you were always stronger without me." I just couldn't bear to see it. Orion moved to stand beside me, but I held up my hand. 30 years of marriage, and I finally saw the truth. Every compliment, every gesture of support, they'd all been chains, disguised as love. "Get out," I said quietly. "Both of you." Mom dash. "I need to be alone." The weight of everything, the betrayal, the lies, the years wasted, pressed down like concrete. "I need to remember who I am without any of you." The door clicked shut behind them. In the silence, I heard something break inside me, and something else, something stronger, begin to rise from the ruins. The police found Zara at the airport, ticket to Dubai in hand. They brought her to the station, where I waited with Orion. Through the interrogation room window, she looked smaller somehow, her designer clothes wrinkled, her makeup smeared. "She wants to talk to you," the detective said. "Only you." Orion grabbed my arm. "Mom, don't dash. I need to know why." I squeezed his hand before entering the room. Zara didn't look up. "Did you know I grew up in a trailer park?" Mom worked 3 jobs, Dad was nowhere. I swore I'd never be that helpless again. "So you made others helpless instead?" I made them see reality. Her eyes met mine, hard as diamonds. "These men, these families, it's all an illusion. Love doesn't last. Only power does." "Is that what you told yourself when you married my son?" Something flickered across her face. Orion was unexpected. He actually believed in things. Loyalty. Family. She laughed bitterly. "Like mother, like son." "The pregnancy? Not Gideon's. Not anyone's." She touched her flat stomach. Amazing what a few doctored medical records can accomplish. The door opened. Clara stepped in, followed by 3 other women, all familiar faces from my salon. Former clients. All involved in Zara's scheme. "Tell her the rest," Clara said quietly. "About the recordings." Zara's composure cracked. "You brought them here? They deserve to know. All of it." As the truth spilled out, the hidden cameras, the blackmail videos, the network of desperate women Zara had manipulated, I felt strangely calm. This woman had tried to destroy not just my family, but dozens of others. "You know what your mistake was?" I said, cutting off her justifications. "You thought breaking people made you strong. But real strength." I gestured to the women behind me. "It's helping them rebuild." "What are you talking about?" "While you were running, we were organizing. My salon? It's becoming a support center. For women like Clara. Like these others. Like you could have been, if you'd chosen differently. You can't dash." We already have. Your victims? They're not victims anymore. They're survivors. And they're all testifying. Zara lunged across the table, but the officers were faster. As they restrained her, she screamed, "You self-righteous bitch. You think this makes you better than me?" "No," I said, standing. "It makes me free of you." Outside, Orion waited with divorce papers in hand. "You okay?" I watched through the window as Zara crumbled, her carefully constructed world of power and control dissolving into handcuffs and criminal charges. You know what? For the first time in months, I really am. 6 months later, I stood in my transformed salon, watching the evening sun paint the walls gold. Where there used to be styling stations, there were now small meeting areas. The back room had become a counseling space. My scissors still worked their magic, but now they did more than just cut hair. They helped women shed their old lives, just as I had. Clara ran our support group now. She had a gift for spotting the ones like her former self, women trapped in webs of manipulation and fear. Together, we'd helped dozens rebuild their lives. Orion visited regularly, bringing coffee and his graphic design skills to our new website. The divorce had changed him, but not in the way I'd feared. He was stronger, more determined. Like mother, like son. Last client's gone, he called from the front desk. "Ready to lock up?" That's when I saw Gideon through the window, standing in the parking lot. He looked older, grayer. The corporate scandal had cost him everything: his job, his reputation, his freedom. House arrest suited him poorly. "Go ahead," I told Orion. "I'll handle this." Gideon didn't speak as I approached, just held out an envelope. "The last divorce papers?" I asked. He shook his head. "My confession. Everything I did, everything I helped Zara do. Names, dates, accounts, things the investigators missed." He swallowed hard. "I owe you that much." "Why now?" "Because you were right. About strength. About helping people rebuild." He gestured at the salon's new sign, "Transformations. Hair, heart, hope. You took something ugly and made it beautiful." I just destroyed things. I studied him, this man I'd loved for 30 years, who'd tried to break me when he couldn't control me. "Keep the confession. Use it to fix what you broke. That's your path to rebuild, not mine." He nodded slowly, understanding what I wasn't saying. Forgiveness wasn't the same as reconciliation. Back inside, I found a letter on my desk. Clara's handwriting. "Dear Lark, I'm leaving town. There's a women's shelter in Seattle that needs help setting up a program like yours. I thought, maybe it's time to pass on what you taught me. About strength. About healing. Thank you for showing me that our worst moments don't define us. Our responses to them do. Love, Clara. P.S. Zara wrote to me from prison. She's asking for help. I think she's finally ready to change. What should I tell her?" I smiled, picking up my phone to text Clara back. Some transformations take longer than others. But they all start the same way, with someone believing change is possible. I turned off the lights, watching my reflection in the darkened mirrors. The woman looking back wasn't broken anymore. She was whole, stronger at the mended places, ready to help others find their way home to themselves.